All right, folks, we made it through First Samuel. Well done. Congratulations.
But all the
Um,
names about did me in these first two chapters.
yep, so now we are on to Second Samuel. I did release the schedule for the rest of the year, and I had to do a lot of futzing to like make it so we can get to the high points while still skipping some of the other stuff. And today is one of the results of that. We have Second Samuel 1 and 2, where a lot of the things that we talked about previously are now going to come into effect in thinking about politics and thinking about how the situation is set up, thinking about how David is kind of set up his own trajectory. And he's going to see how that plays out a little bit today. So let's just go ahead and dive in because Second Samuel begins with David hearing about the death of Saul. So last time we read the downfall of Saul, of how he fell on his own sword. His sons are dead, except for one, we find out. But David was off fighting the Amalekites, and so now he comes back from fighting the Amalekites, and there's someone that comes to him with Saul's things. So what did you think of this initial interaction? What are some of your thoughts about how David reacted? What the Amalekite who came and showed him this? What are some thoughts? Yeah, Larry?
Well, I mean, he gives a different story about Saul's death.
Yes, he does.
I mean,
Yeah.
we thought that Saul fell on his own sword,
Mhm.
and this Amalekite comes up and says, "Well, I saw David and or Saul, and he was had a spear, or he's leaning on his spear, and asked me to kill him, so I did." What? Sort of a different story.
Right. Yeah, Gretchen?
Don't be the messenger.
Yes. Yeah, and it's so bloody. It's almost like this David's a different person. It doesn't sound like the same
I
David. It
can't
sounds
talk
like
right
it's
now. Yeah, I
written by
can't talk
somebody
right
else.
now. I'm on online with my computer. Can I?
Yeah.
Well, we see this time and again with David or with other people. I don't know if there's others in the Bible, but they mourn their enemies with such extravagance. And even when they didn't like them, it's good politics to say only wonderful things about the deceased and what happened to God's anointed. We'll see that, or maybe we've already seen it before, but it's a kind of a standard,
Mhm.
in my opinion. It seems standard. I mean, okay, you died. Oh, I'm so sorry.
So let's go back to the first thing that was brought up. The Amalekite does not have the same story that we read a few weeks ago about how Saul died. Any thoughts onto why this would be different? Why the two stories are different? What are some theories out there? Because I was reading the notes and there's a few running theories of why they don't match.
Oh,
Well, this book was probably written decades, centuries maybe after it happened. So lots of stories get changed over time.
Right. So here's the interesting thing is they think that these two books were written together. And so true, it was written well after King David. But there's also signifiers that like the how often you can tell when something is written is you look at the language, you look at the grammar, you look at the word choice. Um and the word choices seem, all of those things seem to indicate that these two were written hand in hand. And so B, I love your thought. However, it seems to be that something else is happening other than just, oh, the story changed over time. Yeah, Gretchen?
Well, I think that there's a little editing also at play. Suicide is not really a very noble way to die. And
Mm,
so the editor could have come in and changed the Amalekite story and it made it more palatable to people who really don't think suicide is good. But
mhm. So we do the key editors that you will see talked about if you read commentaries, they're called the Masoretes. And we do know the Masoretes edit things. Those were the later on ones. They we kind of can tell when they're changing little things, and we can kind of see the fingerprints of later editors. We've talked about before how a lot of these stories were kind of folk tales that then got stitched together. The one where I pause about saying that the Masoretes edited this to be a little bit more palatable is they normally edit things to make them match, not to make them not match. That I'm not saying it's not possible, just in the previous one, it's possible that they were written far enough apart that the story changed. But the editors try to make things agree, and these very clearly do not. Any other thoughts on what might be happening here? Oop, Helen, check your mute. I had to mute you, sorry.
I,
Yeah, Gary, go for it.
well, the way I read it is it's just two
Now,
different.
can you hear me? No.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Now we
Oh,
can.
okay. Well, is it possible that Saul wasn't quite dead? Maybe he fell on his sword and was still, it doesn't seem possible, but he might still have been alive and wanted to be put out of his misery and asked this guy to kill him.
So that is a possibility. Sometimes it takes a while to die.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the
but-
movies always show it as a very quick process, but yeah, so you could potentially fall on your sword and this guy could have seen him and he'd be like, "Hey, actually, can you like help me?"
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know why the proofreaders are going to say, well, in this chapter he falls on his sword, and this side it's a spear. You know, it doesn't make any difference. They wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So Gary, what was your thought?
Well, I just think it's two different groups or people telling the story, and they want to develop the character of Saul in a way that shows that he had given up and he had just decided this was the end, and it didn't matter all these details. Everybody's
Mhm.
just writing their own, trying to be the most creative they can be.
So here's one more theory for you all. And this is what the commentators are saying. The Amalekites just lying.
Oh.
The Amalekite is lying because Saul and David were known enemies. So the Amalekites are the enemies. I mean, literally, David just got back from killing a bunch of Amalekites. This Amalekite saw the battle, saw Saul's body, and went, "Hey, I can take his clothes, I can take his armor. I'm going to bring him to David, and maybe David will be nice to me."
Didn't work.
No, it didn't. But that the running theory is actually that the Amalekite's just flat out lying. He doesn't know what happened. He made up a story that sounded believable.
Mm.
So there's any number of these, like that is still scholars taking guesses. And this is some of the hard things is it is weird that these don't match up. So that's why scholars look at this and go, okay, there should be a reason why, because people aren't unintelligent. The editors who put this together would have seen that these two don't match. Why did they keep it this way? Oh, well, the Amalekite was just lying. Problem solved.
The person who put together all of the books doesn't seem to notice all there are lots of contradictions. So, and they're just left.
So this is why when you talk about Jewish scholarship, which is different than Christian scholarship, the historic way or one of the things that rabbis read is not just the Torah, or the straight Hebrew. Just so you all know, we've been out of the Torah for a long time. So this is extra Jewish writing. The Torah is only Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
Okay.
So this is extra stuff. And I was asking Rabbi Alicia, I'm like, how often do you do the focus on the other things? And she's like, oh, we use them frequently. But on their in their services in the synagogue, they stick to the first 5 books. So, but this is still within the realm of Jewish scholarship. So what you will see in a series, it is so thick, it is not a book, it is a series of books called the Talmud. You will see the Hebrew script. You will see a layer of interpretation that they literally wrote around it. And then there's another layer where they wrote around that. And it's all rabbis debating what could happen and why these discrepancies are here. So don't worry, the Jewish scholars, they noticed. And the joke is 3 rabbis will have 4 opinions about why things are the way they are. So this is one of the times where rabbis have written for centuries now about why these two don't match up. And I guess the running thought is the Amalekites lying. So the Amalekite is likely lying because the king is dead and they know David's powerful and David's already been giving out gifts. And so he thinks he is giving David what he wants.
Okay, gotcha.
His enemy is dead. Look, I have his armor. I'm going to claim I killed your enemy for you, right? So how does the Amalekite, if we're running with the story of the Amalekites lying, the Amalekite thinks David is going to be happy that David is dead. What does he kind of expect to happen then?
A gift.
He didn't expect to lose his head.
A reward for this.
Yeah.
So do you remember what it says the Amalekite, where the Amalekite was living? It's in a hint. It's in verse 13.
Is that the son of a sojourner?
He's a resident alien.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So he's not living in the Amalekite area. He is living with the Israelites. And so why would you want to bring the powerful Israelite his enemy's gear? What would he be hoping for?
Citizenship.
Land.
Yeah.
Land.
Yeah.
Place in the kingdom.
Yeah. He's probably trying to secure his spot as there isn't nations in the way we understand it today. So there's not really citizenship in the same way. He will always be a foreigner because he's an Amalekite, but he can be powerful in this area. And if he's a resident alien, that probably means he doesn't own land. But he could be like where David is. So David right now is an Israelite living in Philistine territory, but he has land, he has property, he has people. He wants that status where David's going. Probably. That's my guess.
I don't remember seeing that term before in the Bible, resident alien. It sounds so modern.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, technically, the biblical word for alien existed before extraterrestrial.
Oh.
They just applied the term to extraterrestrials. So it's kind of funny that way. But yeah, a resident alien, that is a very common way the Bible talks about people living in your area that came from somewhere else. It's actually a very common theme, especially in Leviticus, is how to do well by the resident aliens.
Oh, okay.
Be kind to them, for you were once foreigners in a foreign land.
Land, yeah.
Resident alien is to distinguish between someone who is passing through, like a caravan, a nomadic group. Those are just people who are traveling through your space. A resident alien is the one who has set up shop, who is staying put. And what they say is you treat them the same way you treat the Israelites. There's actually a lot of protections put towards the resident aliens.
So when David was hanging out with the Philistines, he was a resident alien.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious, how did your text say, instead of saying resident alien, what did it say?
What verse are we in?
That was
13.
13, yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the verse.
It says, I am the son of a sojourner.
Sojourner, okay.
So it different way to translate it. A son of a sojourner means I was brought to a place. And I am living in a culture, like a sojourner is someone living outside of their culture in a way. So that kind of implies that he was the son of an immigrant.
Okay.
My Bible says stranger.
Oh,
That's
okay.
really different. Isn't that kind of a different connotation?
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me make a note, and I'm gonna look up the Hebrew for next time because this word is interpreted many ways. And alien.
Seems to me that the biblical definition of stranger, though, is generally foreigner.
Yeah, generally. I just there's probably nuance, which is the nuance is probably why it's getting translated into English so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of words for it in English.
Yeah.
Sojourner is a little less loaded word than some of the other ones I'm hearing.
It's more loaded than it used to be. Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting because in the ancient world, there, like I kind of touched on, there's no like official way to emigrate. There's no borders, customs. There's nothing that stops people from moving. People are just very migratory. And what will make you stand out is your accent and your clothing. Or like how you wear your hair and like external appearances and accent. Or other physical features. If you're going far enough, you'll notice skin tone and things like that, hair texture and things like that. But it was very, like, people came and went much more fluidly than we understand today. And so their words for it is very different. But even if you look at maps, this is why this time in the history of Israel is actually kind of weird, because in the biblical text, it sees the 12 tribes as its own kind of, we say a nation. Like I said, nation states don't really exist. There's no hard borders, but they have their own king and they have their own like ruling area. But if you look at a bigger map of the ancient world at this time, you will see that Egypt goes up and far and just encloses it. And so they're still like under the rule kind of the Egyptian culture, but the boundaries of what is and what isn't Egypt, there's no line. They don't have maps in the same way we have today with nation state lines. It's much, much fuzzier, more like a gradient of influence and a gradient of power.
I keep thinking about like an ancient, well, I don't know my history that far back, but the idea of hospitality was so important about treating the stranger the right way. And I'm thinking maybe that ties into this notion that there was a lot of movement.
Right. I mean, in this area in particular, I mean, in the ancient world in general, but especially in this area, not having hospitality, like a culture of hospitality, means people die.
Yeah.
If you don't give water, if you don't give food to someone who just shows up, they will die.
Mhm.
And so that's or that kind of they can't just go to the grocery store in the same way. And so that this how you treat the stranger is very important, because it's if you don't welcome the stranger in and you create a culture that is hostile towards strangers, then no one's going to welcome you in if you ever have to travel. So it's a reciprocalness.
I see.
And so the idea of reciprocity and back and forth and how I treat others will dictate how they treat me, culturally speaking, not just like on a one-on-one basis, but you need
I
a
see.
culture of it.
Interesting.
So with that in mind, the Amalekite brought David his enemy's armor. He's expecting some kind of boon, some kind of good thing. What happens?
He gets shot down.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, but he had someone else do it, but he doesn't even think about it. He doesn't he wants to make, I think he's showing that he and Saul were together. I mean, that was in some ways he cared about Saul, so he had to avenge his murder, but he wasn't really, it didn't make sense. The guy just finished him off. I mean, he would have died anyway.
And it seemed like he was being merciful to him because Saul asked him, I mean, in the story. So, yeah. But I mean, it just shows a different attitude toward being merciful. I don't know where that fits in here.
But,
David
but Saul was the anointed one. Saul was the anointed one. You don't kill the anointed one. So that
no
was
matter
David,
what.
no matter what. Right. So I think that's what David was thinking. You can't live if you've done that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it sounds as if he did it in such a matter-of-fact way. Hey, don't you realize you killed the anointed one? Calls the soldier over, says, kill him. And he does.
So what would you say of David's emotional state at this point? What's going on emotionally as well?
He's probably wondering how things are going to go with him. Is he going to take charge? Is he going to be able to do this? Is he going to be recognized as king? He might be worried about it.
Yeah, Gary, I see you trying to jump in. What's going on?
Yeah. I don't think we should overlook the fact that Johnathan was slain also. And I think that maybe David wasn't at his best at that moment.
So one of the reasons we talked about David and Jonathan's relationship before, especially when it was like them embracing in a field. But the other thing where people have often questioned, like, what is going on between these two comes at, like, we have this Song of David, which it said is mentioned in a book, and scholars can't find this song anywhere else. So it's fascinating that they think they know this book of Joshua, but this song's not in it. At any rate, we have it here. But at the very end, it says, I am distressed for you, my brother Johnathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was more wonderful, passing the love of women.
Well,
Yeah.
So it's one of those, either their friendship was so tight that he valued the friendship more than his wife's company, or this is where some people went, what are those two getting up to? I will leave that where it stands. But Gary, I think you're spot on. He is emotionally distraught.
Yeah.
His best friend in all the world, someone he values more than his two wives, was killed and he wasn't there. What do you think is going on with him with the death of Saul? a former father figure who also he had a complicated relationship with. What happens
Tried
then?
to kill him.
Relief, relief.
Well, I think it's probably mixed. It probably has mixed feelings. He's relieved that he's gone, but he may be also grieving. That those can.
Yeah, it can happen, can't it?
Mhm.
That you have even the person that you dislike, you grieve, maybe. You do sometimes.
Mhm.
You don't have them to grieve anymore. Oh, they're gone. I was carrying on about them. I was upset with them, and now what can I do with my life?
He also says some admirable things about Saul in verse 23. Saul and Johnathan, were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. So he's being complimentary there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine the grief of Johnathan in some ways is more straightforward because they had a very close, very affectionate relationship. The grief of Saul, I expect, was messy because yes, there's probably relief because the guy trying to kill him isn't trying to kill him anymore. You mentioned the struggle of grieving the person he was. Like, oh, I remember with the good times and I'm grieving the good times. But also there's a sense of like, I can imagine a sense of, I feel guilty that I'm relieved because I loved this person. I shouldn't be happy that they're gone, but also I kind of like, and then I don't doubt there's another portion of it that it's, I never have a chance to make it right. My chance to reconcile is gone. I don't like it probably would have never happened, but that's something that I've heard when people are talking about the death of someone who they had a messy relationship with. It's final. Nothing else can happen. There's like nothing bad can happen, but also nothing good can happen. It's just kind of it's gone.
Wow.
And so with those kind of things, especially with this beautiful song where he is singing the praises of both of them, for better or for worse, he is singing the good things. And that recurring line, how the mighty have fallen. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Like they were great. Even if he was trying to kill me, he was great. I feel like with that as the backdrop, now let's go back and think about how he deals with the Amalekite. Does it make more sense that he's just like, kill him?
Yeah.
Yes, this whole discussion has made me, sometimes when I'm reading these stories, I feel like the characters are cardboard. I can't get to the heart, their hearts. And I feel like this discussion and everything that you all have brought forward helps me understand them as people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I often quote that, how the mighty have fallen, when I'm happy about something. But anyway, but I see that it is followed by two different expressions: in the midst of battle with one, and how the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war perished. It sort of strikes me that it seems like it is a turning point. The old is gone, the kind of the strength of Saul and Johnathan is gone, and now it's a new time, and I'm not quite sure where it's going to go, but the mighty have fallen.
Yeah. Yeah, the king, the pillar. I mean, the Israelites came out of a time. I mean, if we rewind pre First Samuel, what Saul came out of was a time where a hero would rise up and things would be good for a little while. And then when they died, it just like things seemed to implode. And then there was civil war, and then a hero would rise up. and like things would be good for a while, and then they would pass away, and then like enemies would attack, and it was this cycle of back and forth and back and forth. There'd be a hero and then chaos, hero and chaos. And so Saul was put there because the people are like, we need a king that can have a dynasty so that stops happening. And their first king is now dead with a few of his sons. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. The pillar that was meant to hold up our society is now gone.
It wasn't.
And so that's actually a great segue into chapter 2. So that is just David's reaction. David then is inquiring of the Lord. If you notice, these questions are still very yes/no oriented. This show, if you remember, he has the priest with him, and this is very much, he is asking questions and throwing those two stones, kind of trying to divine God's answer, which is why God's not speaking in paragraphs here. God is saying yes, no. So the first question is, should I go up to Judah? Like, should I, is now the time, should I go? God says, yes, go. Next question, where should I go? We do get to Hebron. The assumption here is like, should I go to Bethlehem? No. Should I go to Gibeon? No. Should I go to Hebron? Yes. And so it's probably they were throwing out options of where should I go? Should I go to Hebron? Got the double yes.
Okay.
So Hebron notably is the burial place of Abraham. Oh, no, wait.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Doubted myself there for a moment. So the burial place of Abraham. So it's a very important religious site to this day. And so he is going there. Notably, that is not the capital where kind of Saul set up. So he's not going to Saul's house and sitting in Saul's chair. He's going to a different place, along with his two wives. And I love it. Every time they mention these two wives, we get their names, which is just always delightful that they remembered these two women. And so he brought all the men who were with him, who also had kind of set up lives with him. These are like his right-hand men. These are the men who have been traveling with him. These are like the head of the bandit people. So these are kind of like his right-hand men, his generals. They now have families and they have property because they've been set up for a while. So they're kind of picking up their lives and they move to Hebron. And the people of Judah came, and the people of Judah anoint David king of Judah. And I'm wondering if you all picked up the detail of the fact that David is being anointed of Judah.
Yeah.
What does that indicate and what does that not indicate? You all know what did it strike you that you expected a different place that David was supposed to be anointed of?
Yeah.
Well, Saul, what was he king of? Was he king of Israel?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was,
So he decides to start out someplace else.
well, kind of, but not really, because wasn't Saul a Benjamin? Right? Isn't that part of Judah too?
I think Benjamin's part of. I thought they said that later on that Benjamin was part of Israel when they were going to go conquer it.
Correct. So let me pull up a map that will help us out here. So notably, Simeon is within Judah, so Judah also kind of implies this area. So this is an older map. The like fuzziness is probably adjusted by this point, but this is when the 12 tribes initially set up. This is the rough approximation of what they have.
So Benjamin is very small.
Yes, Benjamin is a small little region here.
Let's see. That is an interesting.
Is Israel.
Is Israel everything else?
Israel, yes.
Is everything.
So let me click
well,
to see.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. This is
Oh, okay.
Okay.
this is later on. This will be later in this book, Israel and Judah, but this is more or less the approximation of the dynamic that is being set up. So we have the Philistines that are on the coast up here. Up here, this little coastal area is Phoenicia. You have the tribes of Israel that are here and the singular tribe of Judah down here. So
Wow.
David is being anointed by one tribe, not by all 12.
Yeah.
But it's a big one.
But it's a big, it is the biggest. So this comes into play because this kind of division is a very common one. So why this map comes up upon later on is because after the death of Solomon, these two will break apart again, and they stay broken up. And if you remember me talking again and again about the two different times that this region was invaded, you have the northern kingdom being invaded and being taken off into exile, but the southern kingdom doesn't. But then later on, Babylon comes in and invades the southern kingdom and takes them off. This area in the like kind of lower left-hand section is what becomes Samaria. Up here becomes Galilee. But Judah is this kind of southern area, and these two will stay separate for a long time.
Well, where was Jesus? Is Israel is where is Bethlehem?
Bethlehem is in
Galilee.
Benjamin, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah, that's also in one of the. I will have to let me double check that. Bethlehem in
I was just wondering if that was were Judah and Israel still separate at the time of Jesus?
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so Judah
They
is
haven't
where
been back together.
Jerusalem.
They would not been back together.
But Jerusalem,
After
Jerusalem's in, isn't that where the temple was?
Jerusalem is in Judah, but at that time, Jerusalem was nothing. It
Oh,
was
I know
called
back
Jebus.
then, but I was thinking about the time of Jesus. I mean, it's still
Yeah.
Judah.
Yeah.
When did that become? When did the temple get built? I thought it.
Solomon is the one who builds the temple initially.
Yes.
And it gets destroyed by Babylon. And then when they come back from exile, the Persian Empire allows them or gives them explicit permission to rebuild the temple, which is so Jesus was alive during the second temple.
So is Solomon? Solomon is David's
Son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Son.
So this region as a whole being one kind of area, the Romans kind of have this area as a unit more or less because Jewish-ish culture permeates this area. Although Galilee, the region up here, is culturally different, which is why when like Jesus is teaching literally in this like little area just north of the Sea of Galilee, and it's a big deal when he makes the trek south, which is there's especially in the Gospel of Luke, there's a point where like Jesus turns south towards Jerusalem and he starts having conversations. He hits Samaria, they go through Samaria for a little bit and then they follow all the way south, and then the grand entrance on Palm Sunday is when they finally make it here and they enter. So Jesus, which is why the dynamics in Galilee is different than the dynamics that happen in Jerusalem, because these are culturally connected but different. And then Samaria is a whole other thing that we'll talk about eventually. But so like they were connected, but they haven't really been considered one contiguous like country and one contiguous unit of culture and people until the modern era when the state of Israel is established. That's the first time we kind of unify the two areas since the time of Solomon. So considering that whole region, Israel is actually kind of a weird thing because more often than not, it's Israel and Judah. And so we see that start here where we already seem to have that cultural division where the northern area doesn't always connect itself with the southern area. And there are people who will say that these two regions have always been distinct, and it is Davidic propaganda that ever said that these two regions were connected. That this is a narrative of the Southern Kingdom specifically who tried to like recall to a glorious era where these are more like twin siblings that constantly fight. And no, they were never one person. They have always kind of been two, that exactly two kings in their history ever got them to behave. So that said, the situation with we have 15 minutes left and a whole chapter to talk about. We can get through it though, because there's a lot of back and forth here. So David is anointed king of Judah alone. And then what happens is Saul has exactly one remaining son who is, we get his age. He's actually 40 years old. So he is more than old enough to take over the reins of power. But it is very clear that this guy was not set up to rule. Johnathan was the one who was supposed to take over. And so he's kind of set in place as a puppet king for the general Abner, son of Ner, who has been Saul's right-hand guy. We've seen him pop up before. And Abner says, okay, the king is dead. Line of succession says, you're next. And they anoint Ishabal, son of Saul, to be king over Israel. As should be correct. That is the line of succession you would actually expect because a son of Saul is still living. So what do we think about this situation? We know that David's been anointed in private. Now Judah has just anointed him king in the south, the usurper to the throne. And the northern kingdom has anointed Saul's remaining son as king over Israel. What do you think of this situation? What politicking is being set up? What kind of conflicts do you expect? Who's on whose side?
In some ways, it continues the strife between Saul and David. In that the son of Saul, Ishbaal, is appointed. So things are not ever as smooth and nice as one might think they would be.
Yeah, I was surprised when that showed up because I thought David was going to be king by acclamation after Saul died. And because he had been anointed by Samuel? No, who?
Yeah, Samuel.
Yes.
Samuel.
Well, the main question is, which side is God on?
Well, it says that he picked David.
Yeah.
So this is why it's important. When I've been like the whole last book, I kept asking, what of this feels like David's PR team at work? This is when that pays off, because you as the reader, who in the story that we have before us, who feels like the rightful king of Israel, story-wise, narrative-wise, if we believe what's here, who feels like the person?
David. I mean, Ishbaal, we don't know anything about him. What has he been doing? Where is he? Been worshiping Baal, that's for sure.
Oh, thanks for pointing that out. The notes were going to town talking about Ishbaal's name. Ish means man. Baal is most known as a Canaanite god. But I quote directly from my notes. This does not mean the family of Saul worshipped the god Baal. Johnathan's name contains the God of Israel. Baal meant Lord or Master, and probably was an acceptable way of referring to the God of Israel in Saul's day. But this comes in with interpretation down the line that this guy is not that's later interpretation that says that this guy was a pagan worshiper. He was not suited to lead the people of Israel because he had the name Baal. But it's likely it was probably innocuous at the time. But that goes, or that the initial comment of we've been set up to expect David, kind of as you said, to just like come in and set up shop because we've been following David's story. We know he's anointed. The people in the story don't necessarily know that David's been anointed because he was anointed in private by a prophet who is no longer alive. So no one can attest to his anointing other than his brothers. And of course, his brothers are going to say that. And so we have the people who he sent gifts to. And so the people who he gifted a lot of stuff to, they're more than willing to anoint David king. We have seen his military prowess to show how good he was at being a military leader. But we also have seen the work that they've done to say David never tried to kill Saul, which is why David's not trying to take the throne. He's not trying to benefit from his death. He just happens to be there. And we know the prophecies that Saul got that his dynasty wouldn't last. And so we know all this private information that the Israelites do not, which make Ishbal feel like the usurper, doesn't it? But the reality is, Ishbal is the rightful heir of the throne by conventional wisdom. So at first, it just sets up shop where David's in the south, Ishbal's in the north, backed by Abner, son of Ner, which I believe is Saul's uncle, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
So it's family. And what they do is they set up a battle of Gibeon where they have 12 and 12. And so the notes were saying that this sounds like a sporting event.
Yeah.
That like it was not supposed to be a battle. It was supposed to be like a, hey, let's have the Olympics and your side and my side can fight, except it goes haywire. People start dying. All of a sudden, one group is pursuing another group. The three people that it keeps mentioning that are on David's team, on David's side of this, notably, doesn't sound like David's present.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good idea if your adopted dad's uncle is running this thing. It's probably a good idea for David to be nowhere close to this. But we have Joab, son of Zeruiah, who is kind of the leader of them. We have Joab, Abishai, and Ashiel. And all three of these are the sons of David's sister. So these are all his nephews. Joab being the oldest one, and Ashiel being the youngest one. And so these are three brothers, David's three nephews. They are part of his posse, his right-hand men who have been with him for a long time. And so they are the ones carrying out this campaign when the sporting event goes bad. And specifically, the youngest of them continues to pursue Joab. Joab tries to show mercy, saying, hey, stop pursuing me. This isn't going to go well for you, because Joab is a very seasoned soldier. He is old. There's a point where practice and technique will win over brute strength, and Ashiel pursues it and dies. And then his brothers go and revenge him and kill Joab, son of Ner. Or wait, no.
No, they kill Abner. They go after Abner.
They go after Abner,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I was getting my names confused.
But he didn't die
Yeah.
yet.
And then they call it off, and they kind of, Abner's like, hey, are you going to keep pursuing me? And that's when they're like, yeah, this has probably gone too far. We'll call it quits. And they go in their separate directions. So this is all, the way I think of this is kind of like when a sporting team like wins a Super Bowl and they destroy a city. It feels like that kind of like we tried to do a sport like something fun and it just got way out of hand, and then they took it upon themselves to kind of start killing each other.
It sort of has the feeling of something kind of extraneous to me.
It does. It is kind of a side story in a way, but it is showing the dynamics that are being set up, but it is kind of a side story.
It kind of goes back to what Gretchen was pointing out in the song about the last line, how the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war perished. And then here, Abner is saying, is the sword to keep devouring forever? Do you not know that the end will be bitter? I mean, it's sort of like a part of this idea that maybe war is not ultimately the way to solve things, which seems important in a tribal. I mean, that's kind of earth-shattering, really, isn't it? I mean, not that they're going to immediately follow through, but like it's another call to a different way, a new way of looking at order and government. Not that they're going to do that, but I don't know.
Yeah, so I will say, I feel like that applies, especially when you're looking inwardly at people who are just the 12 tribes they know they're related to each other. They know they're connected. They know they share a culture and a God. There seems to be a power struggle here, and that is kind of a call to nonviolence, at least within this area of, you know what, a civil war is probably a bad idea, isn't it? We're not going to be in very good shape if we have a civil war here. Let's call it off.
Right.
So with the minutes remaining, what do you all think of this, how kind of the situation is set up? Because I feel like our Sunday school stories switch. I mean, sometimes they breeze straight from David and Goliath to David the king. Sometimes you get Saul, but what do you all think of this transitional time where David's anointed, but still has competitors? He still has other people he has to deal with. His right to the throne is being contested. What do you all think?
It's a lot messier than we thought.
Yeah.
And it's all politics.
It's been going on for a long time. It feels like it's been going on for a long time. I don't know how many years Saul decided that he wanted to kill David. How many years were involved in that? I guess it must have started when David stopped being that cute little boy that played the kill Goliath and played the liar, whatever it's called, Lyre, and sang.
So what do you think David needs to do to cement his position as king over the entire region, not just a tribe? Because being anointed as king of Judah is basically, he's the chief of Judah. King it's a small area to consider. I mean, even with the entire region, it is a very small region to call yourself king, but nonetheless, it is still weird to call it king. He would probably be more like a war chief of Israel.
Okay.
What does he need to do to truly be king over the entire region? What do you expect?
Well, some good marriages wouldn't hurt.
Marriage. So, he was married into Saul's family once. His wife got married, got kind of taken from him and remarried off, but she's still alive and kicking. So there is that marriage. He can marriage alliance. Other things that would be advantageous for David to do at this point.
Well, he could invade the country with his army.
Ah, so a show of force. He could be a forceful person, and because we've seen David's military people are very successful, they could just go in and like grab it if they wanted.
Mhm.
Other
He
things that he could do?
Well,
Diplomacy with all the other tribes and move, get some kind of communication going because they're pretty isolated groups.
Mhm.
Ah, so you could go up there and try to hatch a deal somehow.
It's just kind of a miracle that they didn't keep fighting and just kill each other all off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
gift giving gifts and trying to be give them position and make them feel like you're part of my kingdom now.
So showing favor and gaining friends, which is once again, that's kind of that's still in the realm of diplomacy, but still distinct enough. Yeah.
Mhm.
We've seen him use this tactic before.
Mhm.
I suppose a good foreign war victory wouldn't hurt.
Ah, defend someone from an outsider.
Mhm.
They say that patriotism is often the highest when there's a common enemy.
Right.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine is a friend
Mhm.
of yours is a friend, an enemy of yours is an enemy of mine.
Mhm. Yeah.
Enemy of yours is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
How is it, Gary?
An enemy of yours is a friend of mine.
An enemy of yours. Boy, my head has to
I'm
start.
against
But
you.
anyway, it's kind of like diplomacy, isn't it,
Yeah.
Gary?
Mhm. Yeah. Larry, did you have a thought?
No.
Okay. So what would you do with Ishbal, who is your competitor, son of Saul, not your best friend though, but the little brother of your best friend? What would you do with the little brother? Someone David probably knows firsthand.
Marry him off to your sister.
So knowing David's response to the death of Saul and the death of Johnathan, knowing that information, how do we expect David to respond to Ishbal?
Well, outwardly, later on, we're going to see that he takes care of the family of Johnathan.
So if I
But-
remember correctly, one of the covenants that David makes with Johnathan is you take care of my family, right? If
Right.
anything ever happens, you take care of my family. And David said he would.
Now, another thing though that's worked for David, that sometimes works, is to send Ishbal off in a battle someplace.
Mm.
Or he might get killed.
What?
So there's maybe we can have a war and war will take care of my issue. But that actually says that Ishbal would listen to David's command, which currently they are rival kings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding something they both want or calling on some loyalty that they should both have because they were connected to Saul.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So there's a calling on a mutual understanding of something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will find out next week. They're gonna talk about, I mean, if you just read ahead, you can find out what happens next. But I think it's interesting to kind of think about, like, what are David's options here? Like he's kind of ascended to a throne, but it's not the throne. He does have a competitor who in some ways has cultural legitimacy that he does not. And so what's a guy to do when he knows he is now the Lord's anointed one? The other guy's been anointed king, but only by people and not by God, not by a priest. So this is the situation that lands in David's lap. he is both mourning and distraught, but also knowing that this now is the time, that this is kind of it. He waited and was patient, and now it's here, and it's not like Saul died peacefully in his sleep, but he died in battle unexpectedly, and now David is kind of being thrust into a position he has been preparing for, but is in this position kind of all of a sudden. So
Isn't it, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, all this in these two chapters, and the anointed one doesn't seem to be trying to even communicate with God. He's just kind of independently reacting and doing things. I just kind of feel that was kind of missing in these chapters.
Well, he did ask God where he should go.
Yeah.
He did. Okay.
So this is where what you will see how people communicate with God is different over time, especially when you're talking about what genre are we talking about.
Yeah.
When it was in the realm of Genesis, Abraham just had like face-to-face conversations with God, where like God seemed to be just walking around and Abraham's like, hey, and they could have those kinds of conversations. We saw Moses where like God could be talked to, but God was so awesome that like Moses had to be so holy, and then he had to do all of these preparatory things so his head didn't explode, and then when he came back from talking with God, he glowed and it scared people, so he had to put a cover over his face. We had Samuel where things kind of were more Abraham-like, where it did seem like Samuel had a direct line to God. But we will see that kind of direct communication with God is really only done by people who have prophetic status from this point forward. That kind of like direct, I can talk to you and God's going to tell me, like not just yes, no questions, not paragraphs, or not just like a sentence or one word, go to Hebron, that God kind of saying things in long, beautiful paragraphs. That only happens now with the prophets. David will ask yes, no questions because he's throwing those stones and he's divining answers. But and we will see David's prayers to God, which are very long, but God's answers aren't going to be those long paragraphs anymore. And that kind of goes with the change in how there's the two features of it where the farther back the story is from when it's written down is the longer God talks. And which is why the previous time felt more mythological, where this is history, where the people writing the stories know how David would have asked these questions and how David would have divined these answers. And it is much, while I still don't say it's history, it is much closer to history. And they would kind of have an understanding that people in that time didn't really have a burning bush or pillar of fire. What they had were the two stones that they could throw. So that it shows in some ways the proximity, but also the changing relationship with God. God is no longer just walking around. God is a little bit more distant in these stories, is removed in a way. And so I think that observation, you both have David not asking God and talking back and forth. But we do still, let's see, it's in at the very beginning of chapter 2, we see David doing a little bit of discussion with God, but it is that very yes, no answer, magic 8-ball, shake for an answer. And so how does it make you all feel though, that like that long paragraph where God talks in like long sentences and gives people guidance, like that's kind of gone for now? Does that feel weird to see that kind of, or like what comes up with that kind of being absent from the story now?
I liked it better when God was walking around. Even when God was coming out of the was sitting on top of a tent.
Uh-huh.
That was, I thought, pretty weird. It was, I still guess, I like the Abraham's relationship
Hmm.
or Moses,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but it's also not. I like the relationship. I don't necessarily like what God's telling people to do.
Yeah.
Fair.
It seems more direct, but it also seems to also have now some diminished power,
Yeah. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
when he was right there in your face.
Right. Right.
Now, well, you hear it secondhand, third hand, or,
Yeah.
sort of indirectly.
But it's also giving man more independence
Right.
Yeah.
to make decisions on their own.
Yeah. And, well, nobody's saying go away. I don't want to hear it. It's not saying that to God. So
Yet.
that's what we do now.
It's also the book that's the religion of the people. And so, they're looking for God and what God wants.
Hmm. Right.
At least that's what I would assume.
So this is one where um because we bind all of these together, there can be a habit where we look at them the same way, which is I always find it interesting when people go to the Psalms looking for an answer for a question. And I'm like, you would never today look to poetry for an answer to history. That's just a bad idea. Poetry is normally or is known to play fast and loose with historical facts. Like they try to be accurate, but poetic license is a term for a reason. And so this is a book where previously, especially in the Torah, the first 5 books, the central figure is God's relationship with someone. And the relationship is kind of first and foremost, where, especially in Genesis, where you saw the relationship with Abraham, and then that relationship got passed to Isaac, and then it got passed to Jacob, and then it got passed to Joseph. And the relationship was the consistency. And then you had the relationship with God, Moses, and the people kind of being the forefront of the next part. God's relationship is not the main character here. Last book, the main character was Saul. And now it's David. Where God is kind of a side character because it's more of a history of how things happened. You don't go, this is more of a record of how these people acted in the world and how they related to God. But I don't think that it would be, you don't go to this looking for God's word in the same way that you would go to the other stories and look for God's edicts for all time. This doesn't have edicts for all time. This is God giving David advice.
And the writers were trying to build up David, not God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we often, I feel like, approach the Bible like God is always the main character. God's not the main character of these stories, which is why the Jewish community, while holding these important, they kind of put them, they're in a different bookshelf. They're not part of the Torah.
Okay.
In a similar way, in at least this is what I do. I hold the Gospels to a different standards than I hold Paul's writings. Paul's writings are like, there's some helpful things, but it's not Jesus. Jesus is and Jesus's sayings is the main character in a way that Paul talks about Jesus, but in a very different way. This is I don't know if that's a helpful comparison. So like David really is the main character here.
Right.
And so sometimes David's story is helpful. Sometimes David's story is a great lesson in what not to do. But he's also not, he's not meant to be a figure that's meant to be replicated again and again and again. The story does not expect you to do what David does.
I was wondering, I know David was very sorry. I mean, he atoned for what he did with Bathsheba and killing her husband. But doesn't he get to keep Bathsheba?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll get to that story in a few weeks.
I know.
But it's one of those, because when it comes to that, my question will always be, what exactly is David sad about?
Yeah.
Anyways, we are well over time. Any final thoughts before I pray us out for today? All right, well, let us pray. Loving God, like in this section of the Bible, we don't often hear you talk for paragraphs telling us exactly what to do. We look to your scripture to see what other people have heard you say. We look to the story of David to see the wisdom you gave him, the encouragement, and we see the way that you let him make his own choices as well. And we know you give us the same choices, that we have the scriptures to guide us, your words to guide us, and yet you may let us make our own choices. Sometimes those are the right choices, and sometimes, God, we choose the wrong thing, and we know we do. But yet you still say that you love us, that there is always forgiveness, even when we choose horribly wrong. And we thank you for that. We thank you for your abiding presence, that nothing we've done wrong has ever made it so you abandoned us. So stay with us for the week ahead. Give us guidance, give us wisdom, give us nudges, and help us know where you are truly still active and involved in our world. Maybe not like a puppet master puppeting events, but still in the world, still blowing your spirit blowing through us, guiding us each and every day. So be with us until we're able to gather again together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Chris.
Nice.
Yes, that was
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.